Hey everyone, and welcome to Secret Hopper Success Stories. My name is Andrew Copeland, and today I'm excited to be joined by three Secret Hopper breweries to discuss how they use guest feedback data to create exceptional taproom experiences and to boost sales. Secret Hopper launched in 2017 at a time when many breweries still had the "if you brew it, they will come" mentality. Needless to say, that doesn't cut it in 2024. The taproom is about more than just great beer. That's a must. It's also about building a memorable atmosphere with engaging staff. Secret Hopper has helped over 500 breweries nationwide by gathering objective database insights that drive success. Through our mystery shopping program, we pay beer enthusiasts to visit taprooms to provide clear, actionable feedback. Each month, we provide our brewery partners with comprehensive reporting, including feedback from 4 unique taproom visits, covering 30 plus data points per visit. These data points track the entire guest experience from arrival to departure across different days, times, and level of busyness to give you a full view of your taproom's performance. Something I'm proud of, Secret Hopper pays for itself as the sales generated from the visits exceed the business's cost. But most important, our brewery partners use this unique set of taproom data to gain actionable insights for continuous improvement. Today, I'm joined by 3 guests spanning the country to discuss how they're using taproom data to create more memorable and profitable taproom experiences. So let's meet them. And Jensine, you're to the right of me. You get to go first.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Jensine. I'm the Director of Operations at Tröegs Brewing Company. Tröegs is located in Hershey, and we are a destination brewery with a retail store and a restaurant and a private event space. As far as how it feels when you walk into the brewery, I don't know am I at the right point to answer that question?
Tell us what it feels like when we walk into Tröegs.
Okay, yeah. So when you walk in the front door, you're kind of hit with everything all at once. So in our tap room, they have an exposed space that shows the production brewery. So you'll see our brewing vessels. We'll see our grain out silo. You'll see kind of the beginning of the brew process. And then we have a self-guided tour path that goes down fermentation. So 30-foot ceilings, 100-foot bar, concession style snack bar way down the way, and about 250 seats inside.
Needless to say, a lot goes on to make the overall experience amazing.
It's a big space. Yeah, it's a big space and a lot of people. Great team. Thanks.
Love it. Well, thanks again for being here. Nathan in California, you're up.
Hey there, I'm Nathan McCusker from Angry Horse Brewing. We're located in Montebello, California, which is just east of downtown LA. Coming into our brewery, you walk into the main taproom space, and we're all about community. So it's customer experience is huge for us. We try to greet people right as they come in the door, let them know that they can come right up to the bar to order. Have an open space with the brewing equipment set up towards the back, so people can see us in action in the back. We're really excited to be on the call today. Thank you.
Nathan, how big is your taproom?
We're about 4,500 square feet with our event space. The main tap room is about 2,500, and then we added on an event space for musicians and rentals and stuff during COVID.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being here. And Mike in Minnesota, welcome.
Hello there. My name is Mike Cornet. I'm one of the founders here at Prize Brewing. We're based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, shipping beer since 2014. And we opened our tap room and brewery in 2017. So we were brewing at other breweries for about 3 years prior to that. Our tap room we're the 9th largest brewery in the state of Minnesota by production. We're the largest brewery, self-distributing brewery. So we're about 8,700 barrels. Most of that is all of it is self-distro that's not sold through the tap room. And we're right in the middle of Minneapolis. So we are on the river on the Mississippi, and it's very close to the city, but also very green space around where we're at. What people notice when they come in is we have a very large patio that's the whole front of our building, and the building's our space is about 350 feet long. So it's a very kind of long space. So you come in on one of the ends, but you've already kind of walked through the patio. You can see the brewing equipment on the way in, the bar is on the right when you come in. And really for us, because of our setup and because of our location, we are very heavily QR oriented. So about 75% of our business is QR driven, meaning people go and self-service from the table. The other 25% is walk up. It changes throughout the season and throughout the day. But our space is also pretty large. As we're the second largest brewery and restaurant in the state of Minnesota. There's about 560 seats inside and about 700 seats outside. That's pretty good for Minneapolis in that your outdoor capacity and your indoor capacity are about the same, because we have 6 months where you can be inside, or you have to be inside, and 6 months where everybody wants to be outside. So it allows us to move back and forth with the seasons. We also do a number of private events. We have feather bowling and feather bowling leagues, which is like lawn bowling. It's cross between lawn bowling and bocce. That's inside of our brewery. We're one of the few places outside of Detroit that has that. And we have a full restaurant in our tap room as well. So we're really focused on everything from the wholesale distribution to in-house food and beverage to private events, and a very large patio and large music festivals in the summer.
So just off what the three of you had said so far, you're much more than just a brewery. You put out overall experiences designed to appeal to all types of people. So Mike, I'm really curious, why is investing in taproom data important to you?
Well, it's especially when you're a lot of QR code ordering like we are, it's very difficult to know how things are going all the time. So we work on gathering data at many points in the process. So we get feedback from all of our guests when they do QR codes. We have a feedback section on that every time they do an order. So we can get like a mini survey basically, and they can rate us on a couple of points. We also use Secret Hopper, and we have done some surveys that we've sent out through our through our email system, our email newsletter. And for us, data is super important because we need to know what's going on. We're open 7 days a week. We're open from 11 a.m. to midnight, just about every day. Some days we close a little early, but we have a lot of hours that we cover. And it's really important for us to know exactly what's going on. And Secret Hopper has been great because we can get information from all those different day parts and all the days of the year that we can use to drive decisions.
I thought it was so interesting. So wearing my other hat, Crafted Professionals, we host a lot of virtual conferences. And just a few years ago, I would say it was 2020, we started to see the word data creep in, primarily on the production side. The next thing you knew, data was everywhere. It sounds like common sense, but it's so great to see more brewery owners and managers and staff making data-driven decisions. So at Tröegs, Jensine, why is having taproom data important to you?
Yeah, so kind of similar to what Mike had to say. We don't have the traditional metrics of like a restaurant. So when you come into the tasting room, we don't seat people. They can seat themselves and they can move around freely in that space. As I mentioned earlier, we have a tour path. We have a retail shop. We want people to really get the whole experience. So you're not going to spend your entire time with a single bartender or server. All of our bartenders are trained to wait tables and do bar service, and all of our food's concession style. So you're going to interact with a minimum of 2 people, but probably more like 5 to 6 people during your experience. So it's very hard for us to understand as well, just like exactly what that unique experience was like for that individual guest. And so having data like this, especially with such open-ended questions, just gives us some really great insight into how people feel when they're here, how welcome they feel, and what's their likelihood of coming back, right?
And that's what it's all about, giving people reasons to return. Now, Nathan, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, we started Secret Hopper not that long ago. I guess it's been maybe 9 months, and we're very, very data driven on the back side of things, the back of house side of things, with our full ERP and measuring fermentation. And we wanted to, especially now that we're growing, we wanted to take that same data from the front of house since we can't be up there as much. Community is one of the biggest things in our brewery, and we love the idea of education and engagement. And when you can't be in the tap room 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we just want to make sure that our customers are having that experience that we want them to have when we're not there. And to find out what we might be doing wrong as owners and managers when it comes to training and development of our staff team to get them to naturally be able to create that experience. So we're really excited about the Secret Hopper program and looking at how we can grow and make it better as we continue to use it.
And Nathan, you hit on two of my favorite words, education and engagement, because that's what the taproom experience is all about. And some of the breweries I interact with, they train their team on the importance of the initial greeting, that first hello or sincere goodbye, perhaps offering strong recommendations or maybe ways to motivate them to always encourage beer to go. While all of these little aspects contribute to the big picture, and our data covers everything from the entirety of a guest taproom experience, I'm curious for all of you today, for your brewery, is there a certain aspect of the taproom experience that you put greater emphasis on with your team?
Yeah, I can kind of chime in on that. Sorry if I cut you off, Nate. So the guest, we kind of think about our guest experience in the framework of building fans for life. So we also are a distribution brewery. We distribute to 10 states in the Mid-Atlantic region. And fortunate for us here in Hershey, that distribution footprint overlays very well with the tourism that we see to this area. So people are traveling to Hershey either for Tröegs or for another reason from a lot of these neighboring states. And we're giving them that first impression of not just the tap room, but the brand in total. So our goal is to create a positive, memorable experience for our guests that basically gives them, turns them into brand loyalists, excuse me.
Thank you. Nathan, how about you?
Yeah, very, very similar. I mean, Tony Robbins talks about like creating that raving fan culture, and that's kind of what we're trying to do is create that raving fan culture. Make sure people are aware of what our mission and our motto is, and how we aspire to be a benefit corporation and give back to the community through highly crafted craft beer. Um, so yeah, it's all about engagement, making sure that we have that touch point right as people come through the door. We're introducing ourselves the moment they get to the bar, offering suggestions on the beers, following up if somebody gets a flight. What'd you think of it? Oh, you didn't like that one, but you like this one. Well, let me give you a recommendation with this one. We do have counter service, so there are some limitations with what we can do there, but we are encouraging our staff to get out from behind the bar and try to engage with people at their table whenever possible. Um, so yeah, it's really just all about engagement. How do we create that natural environment where staff feel comfortable to create those experiences in a very natural, free flowing way?
And we'll dive into those strategies shortly. And now, Mike at Prize, is there a part of the experience in your tap room that's really focal to your brand?
Yeah, one of the things that we're looking to do every day is create consistent experiences. And I think that that's a challenge with some of these larger destination breweries that I think we all have. And one of the challenges there is that you can be extremely busy and you could be very slow depending on the day of the year and the time of the day. And it's really important that we make sure that people have the same great experience every time. It's one thing to create a great experience when your best team member is working or when it's a beautiful day and everybody's in a great mood. But trying to create that 12 hours a day, 363 days a year is a challenge. And so that's one of the things that we've been focused on with our data, is ensuring that we have consistent daily service to our guests.
Yeah, it's tough always being on. So, Mike, do you have any tips or tricks for when you have a packed tap room on a Saturday afternoon or during an event to making sure each guest feels engaged and appreciated or even acknowledged?
Yeah, I think the main thing is when it's really busy, when you're at the table, that's where you make your best contact with the guest. And if you think about it, when there's a counter service business, which most of us are, is primarily counter service, there's line pressure. It's like back pressure on a canning line. People feel the pressure of the people behind them, and they speed up, and they don't really want to engage as much when they feel like it's busy. And so for us, when we are either bringing food and drinks to the table, or we're bussing, or just straightening the chairs, or sweeping, or whatever we're doing out there with the guests, that's the most important touch point that we can do, because that's where they don't feel the pressure, where we don't have the pressure, and we can check in and see how they're doing in a way that's not the TGI Fridays manager swinging by all the tables and asking for how you're doing, but it's a way of saying, well, while I'm bussing your table, how was the food? It's a much more natural way of doing it, and I think that we're still in the era of large counter service businesses that are relatively new if you think about the kind of history of restaurants. And we are all figuring out how best to inject service into that experience when a lot of QR codes and counter service is driving the primary sale interaction. So definitely it's that table touching is in a natural part of the service and not an unnatural, I'm the manager, I'm just checking in type of way.
Yeah, it has to feel authentic. No one comes to any of our tap rooms to feel like they're in a Cheesecake Factory or anything like that. It needs to be real, meaningful encounters. And, I heard a really good quote recently. I imagine many of you have read the book Unreasonable Hospitality. If you haven't, really great motivating book that just sat there to inspire. But Will Guidara, the author of it, he goes, hospitality makes people feel seen. If it's not, it's just really good service. I really enjoy that quote. And now I want to kind of take it to how you're using those touch points to do both. So when you look at that experience in your tap room, first off, we all want to see greater revenue. So in what ways are you all incorporating feedback directly contributed to sales? Which ways has incorporating feedback directly contributed to sales increases or revenue growth in your tap room? I'd love to hear any strategies that you've taken from data to see increases to that bottom line, or maybe higher tabs or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know that I can point to a very clear linear data point, but we train our team on our 3 steps to giving great service. This is come from, like, the curriculum for it has come from Zing Train. If you haven't seen Zingerman's, I know you guys probably have, but they have a really great training program that a couple of the managers have gone through. Basically, it's super simple. Find out what they want, get it for them, go the extra mile. So really, it just comes down to asking open questions and then listening to them. We offer so many different options for their experience, whether they just want to come in for lunch on a Wednesday and they want to get their sandwich and go back to work, or they're here on a Saturday and they're only in town, once this year and they want to get the full experience. There's a lot of different questions that are going to naturally lead us in a direction that's going to help, us give them exactly what they want, and just making sure that they know it's available to them. Because again, there's just a lot of options out there, and it's up to us to kind of help craft their experience.
Absolutely. So Nathan, with the secret hopper data you've gotten so far, how have you used it to create more profitable visits?
Yeah, so similarly, I don't know if I can talk to a specific data point. We have seen a correlation as our scores on Secret Hopper go up. We have seen higher ticket prices. We have seen more return customers. And as we've seen some different dips in Secret Hopper, the same thing ends up happening. We see our sales go down ever so slightly. So again, causation and correlation aren't necessarily the same thing, but I definitely think that there is a correlation between having better experiences and getting that feedback to increase sales, increase tips. And that is one thing that I have seen pretty consistently as we started implementing some of the changes in our business based on the feedback we were getting, our tip rate went up pretty substantially, which was pretty interesting to see. And I think exciting to share with our staff team as well as like a positive feedback loop.
That's one of my favorite metrics, looking at tip percentage, because if I'm barely going through the motions, offering you, Nathan, like a low level of engagement, you're going to tip me less. But if Mike's offering me some high level of service, when I say, wow, he was the best bartender I've ever had, I'm going to be more likely to come back and I'm going to tip them more. And we see that in the data that we have. We also see that, when you receive a high level of engagement in a tap room, you're going to spend 30% more when you get that low level of engagement. So it all makes sense what you're saying. Now, Mike at Prize, taking the data you see on guest experience, how are you using it to increase sales or tabs or revenue growth as a whole?
Yeah, so similar, we want repeat visits. I mean, that's really where the growth comes from in these types of businesses, at least in our market. Minneapolis, I mean, it's a beautiful place, but it's not exactly a tourist destination. And so really it's all about bringing people from around the metro into our location, having them come back. The 2 things that we've used data to drive is what our emphasis is in service and our steps of service. And 2 of those areas that we changed because of the secret hopper feedback is, 1, the slowing down at the delivering of food. That was one thing that we started to do, that we were having some of our team members that were just really dropping food and drinks off. And we kind of called them like food and drink delivery ninjas. They were super fast and efficient, but you didn't see them. And all of a sudden there's the drink in front of you. And, that's a missed service experience or service opportunity. And that came up in our reviews. The second, but never came up in our Google reviews, right? Like it's something that only comes up in Secret Hopper. The second thing, yeah, because it's too subtle. It's like people don't usually leave reviews for things that are missed opportunities for great service.
I dropped off the food way too quickly. I don't think I've ever seen that in the
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, that's not. We do get reviews sometimes that our pizza comes out faster than the beers, but that's a logistics problem. So the other piece that we've changed because of Secret Hopper, because of the data, is when people have questions, we have stopped waiting for them to ask questions, and we've started to draw them in and ask them if they would like a recommendation. And it sounds small, but that has, as we have 30 different beers on tap, that asking them if they have been here before or if they would like some recommendations has allowed an opening for that experience where people feel more comfortable coming forward to the bar. Whereas prior to that, because it was counter service, they didn't want to come up and get in line until they had reviewed the menu and decided what they wanted. So by our team drawing them in, that has changed that service experience by allowing us to have that conversation. Now, we don't know how that translates into sales, but we believe that those good interactions translate into repeat visits.
No, I would agree to that. So for the three of you, we want to get these tabs higher. Is there anything you're doing in your tap rooms with regard to upsell opportunities that's really working? Nathan, you were quick to unmute, so I'm calling on you.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is circling back and making the ask. When we've consistently started offering rewards to people to upsell beer to go, they'll make the ask, and if you make the ask 9 times, I shouldn't say 9 times out of 10, more likely somebody will take you up on the offer. If they just have to look over and see it, they're not going to buy it at all. So our big upsell opportunity is, as people are cashing out, letting them know that, oh, you really like the East LA IPA, so I got a couple. We actually have that on cans right now. Would you like to take some cans to go? Or our merch display is here. I'm glad to hear you had a great experience. Have you considered getting a t-shirt? Just to let people know that it exists. And it's a little bit easier with beer to go than it is with merch. But if you offer the beer to go, a lot of times somebody will say, oh yeah, I didn't even know you had beer to go. You guys can this here? Get excited about it. It's another touch point. So it's the easiest upsell opportunity we have.
And no one's going to get mad at you asking a question. Do you want to take some beer to go? Do you want a flight? Do you want another beer? They're just going to say no if they don't want it. And just like you mentioned, while it's not 9 out of 10 times someone's going to say yes, it's kind of close. So the data actually shows that when guests aren't encouraged to purchase beer to go, they're going to get the purchase on their own 1 out of 10 times. But when you ask that question, the guest is going to make the purchase 49% of the time on those visits. And that blows my mind. Simply asking that question, nearly 50% of the time, the guest is going to say yes because you put that idea in their head.
Yeah, one thing that I thought was really interesting is, even for our regulars, that staff were afraid to ask every time, would you like to get a 4-pack of that to go? I started doing it when working in the tap room and saw a consistent increase of those regulars saying, oh yeah, I didn't even think about that, and grabbing a 4-pack to take home with them, even though they're there 3-4 days a week, consistently bringing beer home. And I think staff seeing that in real time helped them to make those asks moving forward.
Jensine, at Tröegs, with such a large facility, how do you increase tap size? Any strategies that you see successful?
Yeah, so similar in that we also have the retail store. So we do a lot of upselling of experiences. One of the methods that we do that is using our print menus. Anything that's only available at the brewery, because in our region, we're relatively well-known, distribution. So you could go to the grocery store and get our beer off the shelf. So one way that we try and drive people into the store when they're here visiting is we highlight everything in blue on our menu that's only available at the brewery, so they know that this is their chance to get it. And the goal is just to get them in the threshold of the retail store, and then hopefully they're buying some merch and stuff to go along with it. Another call out would be, have you taken a guided tour lately? We do guided tours 4 days a week right now. And it's a really cool way to get to know the brewery better. it's a fun experience, and we find that people who take the tour are more likely to buy our beer once they go back out into the market because they know so much about us now at this point. They've had this really great, positive, memorable experience. A little bit more like tactile sort of things that we do is with beer pairing. So our bartenders who are walking out on the floor will engage with guests about what they're eating and make a suggestion for their next beer, bring them a sample with the hope of getting that one more beer sale incorporated into their visit. We've also noticed some trends as of recently that we were seeing an uptick in our small plates category and our soups and salads category. And we sort of incorporated that as like a way to incentivize people to buy multiple so that they can get and try a couple of different dishes in their experience and potentially even share them with their table. And that's overall increased our check average at the snack bar.
So I love small plates when I'm drinking, but why do you think you saw an increase recently?
I think that people don't always want to commit, especially in a concession style environment. Like they might not know exactly what to expect. So having options is helpful. Also, even though the like total check average is gone up, I think people see the menu item as more affordable and they're more likely to buy some multiple things at a lower price point than one entree at a higher price point.
That works for you?
Yeah.
So, Mike, at Prize, you mentioned that 75% of your ordering comes through QR codes. So, I imagine that might make the upsell opportunities a little bit more difficult, but I would love to hear where the opportunities lie for you to get guests to spend more.
Yeah, for us, one of the things we've done to really just kind of increase the experience, which we think helps people stay longer and have a better time, is we've started to do samples. And we've done some tests on it. We haven't really rolled this out in a large way, but the tests that we've done have been very positive, where a manager will just go around and just hand out samples. And it was a lot like we were talking about, these destination breweries. This is about a sampling opportunity for people to come in and try things that they can't get in the market. And so by taking things that are only available in the tap room and sampling them out, we are actually kind of delivering on the mission of helping people experience our products and our brand and what we can do, but also it's giving them something that's a great experience that they weren't expecting. And I think restaurants would do that more if they were actually trying to give people an experience, but really they're there to sell them more on that one ticket, where we're really looking to build that larger engagement and larger experience and positive feelings around our brand. So just focusing on samples of the beer, which is our core business, that's what we're focused on. It has been very positive when we've done it.
Awesome. No, thanks for sharing that. And you mentioned earlier that, you received feedback from a Secret Hopper report that said your food runners, your delivery people were delivering too quickly. So you made adjustments based on that. Jensine and Nathan, has there been anything surprising in the data you've received that you've read like, oh, that's really interesting, and made adjustments accordingly?
For us, one of the big ones that caught me off guard is the people that didn't have a great experience when they weren't greeted immediately and when the taproom staff didn't introduce themselves. Like I didn't realize like how big of a deal that was for people. So we've shifted that into a new SOP that the moment they come through the door, it's, hey, I'll be right with you, or come on up to the bar when you're ready. And then once they get up there, making sure that they introduce themselves. And then the people that feel a little bit less comfortable, they've actually made a sign that says, hello, my name is, and it's right there in front of them as they're taking the order. But that alone, I think made a huge impact month over month. That was probably the biggest number-wise jump that we did, is when we changed those two things.
That's so interesting, because if you ask probably 9 out of 10 guests if they care if the staff member introduces himself, the answer is going to be no, because no one really thinks about that. But subconsciously, it does impact the visit. It makes everybody feel a little bit more connected.
Yeah, and I think with the... Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think with the coming through the door and making sure you're greeted as well, it's that perception that it didn't take as long to get a beer, because I was acknowledged immediately. So the line didn't change. It's still the same line. You're still waiting the exact same amount of time, but I've been acknowledged. So it's like it resets that counter in my brain so that once I actually get my beer, I have a more positive experience.
Yeah, Nathan, that's what I was jumping in to say, is that the hello and goodbye are so critical in that they create a very easy touch point that feels really good. But exactly what you're saying, Andrew, that if you surveyed people and asked them if that was important, they would say no until they're in the moment, in the experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the things that we found, I don't know if it would be surprising, but it was really good to just kind of have it in black and white, is, being a destination brewery in a tourist community, we see a fair amount of people who come through our doors that we would not describe as like beer geeks, right? Like they're here because their kids are screaming from the park and they need to eat something and dad wants a beer. And I think it got so ingrained into our staff's mentality that that was the average customer, that it was surprising to get feedback in through Secret Hopper where people were identifying themselves as people who really care about beer, and they wanted that next level staff engagement. And they wanted to talk about, why does this Schwartz beer, taste the way that it does, and how often do we bring it out, and what does scratch beer mean? And so being able to just kind of share that with the team and be like, hey, you've got a lot of customers here who are looking for this level of engagement, and maybe they're getting lost in the noise, but you need to find them and you need to seek them out. I think you also shared an article at one point in your newsletter, perhaps, about party size and how that influences how people, what their expectation is on staff engagement. And we saw some of those trends as well. Like bigger parties are entertaining themselves, but the 1 and 2 person party is looking for a little bit more. And so that was a really good call out we were able to use also.
Yeah, it's all about kind of looking at those context clues to craft the right experience. So you mentioned, Jensine, finding out that people want to know more about your beer. So what part of the adventure are you kind of instructing your team to ask certain questions on to kind of find out if that person, that guest may want to know a little bit more? Are there any prompts you'd like to put out there?
Yeah, I mean, usually our standard question is, what brings you in today? And then we can find out if they're here because there's a conference down the street, or they're here because they're visiting their aunt who's in the hospital, or, whatever it is. And so there's so many things that can splinter out from there. And we kind of bucket that into 2 categories. So you've either got your semi-local person who's semi-regular or has been here before, plans to revisit, or you've got your traveler. And then we can either suggest things like our best-selling IPA because they're going back to their home market and we might not see them again for a year or more. Or we can suggest the things that you can only get here at the brewery, because they're looking for what's new and next. And, oh, by the way, we have, live music on Fridays and you should come back and see us. And, our new menu's coming out next week. And then we start to drive a little bit more on like that repeat business and inviting them back for the next experience right away.
Awesome.
So such a great question.
Yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
I was just going to say, it's such a great question. The why are you here? Not only does it help you to understand why they're there, but it also is a good feedback loop as well for like what's working, where are my opportunities, where am I not touching? This person just happened to stumble upon us because they're here for a conference. Oh, maybe that's where I should be advertising. Such a great question.
Yeah, so we're also working with consumers that are not as deeply engaged with craft beer outside of breweries as they were, as the kind of craft beer drinker was 10 years ago. And I think that that's something that has also changed how we need to interact with people. Like they're not coming to our websites and reading about us on social media all day, every day, but they do have questions when they come in. I think that a lot of breweries used to spend a lot of time in talking about what's new and what's coming up in all of their marketing channels, trying to attract people in. Now we're the place where people are going to be coming into breweries, regardless of what we're putting out on social in terms of what beer is coming out. They're always expecting new beers. So if we can give them an experience where they can try something there, they're gonna like that. That's gonna be something exciting, even though it's a different type of exciting than what people used to do, which is follow online and then go around to all the releases to see them released. So it's just thinking about how the consumer mindset has changed around craft beer, and how as breweries we need to meet people where they're at and not just try to cater to people that are eating and sleeping and drinking and thinking about craft beer every day of the week.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how the consumer mindset has changed. I mean, literally looking at a decade. I mean, say your lifespan of having a brewery, Mike, it's changed a ton. And we're always working to find the best way to engage guests and get them to spend more money. So I want to focus one question on the data that you all receive monthly. It's always interesting talking to different brewery owners, taproom managers, because sometimes they all have a different metric they look for first when they're going through the secret hopper reports. Is there a certain number or question that really jumps out to you and is important when you're reviewing the feedback?
Yes, I'd say it's what could we do better to enhance the experience is one that I go to pretty quickly. And the other is, what would make this your go-to brewery? Those are really interesting, because if you can overcome distance, that means you're doing something right. I think those are people that you can really read into and understand what their mindset is and how they're coming about it.
Yeah, if you can get someone to drive for an experience, that's awesome.
Yeah, so before I answer that question, I'm just going to go back for 1 second because it's kind of related. But I wanted to know, Mike, from what you had mentioned earlier about giving out free samples, as a way to kind of get in front of people. Is there like a question that you pose when you approach the table, or how do you get that? Like, how do you enter into that conversation?
One of the things is you have a tray with a bunch of samples on it, and you then use the magic word, which is new. We have a new beer. Would you like to try it? And I think that just the idea of having it there, so there's a low commitment. The commitment is just, sure, yes. It's easy to say yes to that question. And the fact that it's new, it doesn't matter if it's new that week or that month, even if it's something that hasn't been around before, that's an opening where people can try something that they wouldn't normally try. Because people that are more casual and like you're talking about, people playing with their kids at the park, they might not take a chance on some wild style that's new. And for us, we even have like a mixed fermentation program and lambic program. And to get people to try that a glass at a time or a bottle at a time is really challenging. So for us, we can bring those kind of out there products that are not going to really mesh with everybody, but they're going to try something and have an experience that even if they really don't like a mixed fermentation sour, they are going to remember it because it's such like a different experience. So just approaching them with new and not being afraid to give them something that they're not going to enjoy or not going to order an entire order of, but just make it so that they can try something new.
That's awesome. Thanks. So yeah, one of the key metrics that we definitely look at a lot is staff engagement. And yeah, I mean, we've learned probably the most from that category, kind of touching on like what I said earlier, just the different levels of engagement that people are looking for and how it varies across different party visits. It's also giving us a really big opportunity to just have an open-ended discussion with our own team about, how they're approaching tables, language choice, like, literally the words that they speak and the order that they speak them in, and how that can help open doors to finding out more about what the customer wants. So we've been trying to jack up that metric more than probably any other, or at least spent the money.
Metric, love it. Nathan, how about you at Angry Horse?
Yeah, it's same as the other two. It's funny, we're so similar on these things, but in staff engagement is such a huge thing with us. So that's one of the first places we go. And then what would make this your go-to brewery? And a lot of times it is the distance thing. Like, we either didn't have a good experience because X, Y, and Z, and the distance is too far, or we loved this. It was a great experience. Loved the musician, but it's so far and there's no other breweries in the area. But those, I always feel like there's the golden nuggets in those two questions. But it's interesting. I feel like every time we get a report, there's a different data point that I'm like, oh, that's interesting. In like what I see as being random questions.
Well,
it's kind of like the
brewery owner, they're going to evolve too. Some months you're going to be focusing on one thing. You might be going through things. The next month you're going to constantly be figuring out where you need to put your focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as we get better in certain aspects, we start focusing on those a little bit less, which is interesting because that's one of the things we just saw recently is as we stopped focusing on the engagement question as much and started focusing on some other things, we saw our score and engagement go down. So it's interesting what you focus on grows.
One of the things that we've seen that I don't know, this is probably meta in how it shows up, but we find that being a large space, that the scores are lower in the slower times. and that people have a higher expectation for service when it's slower. And so when we're consistent in how we approach things, the consumer's mindset is different. When they come into a 1,000 seats and they're one of 4 parties in there at 11 o'clock on Sunday, they have a very different expectation of service than when they come in at Saturday at 4 and it's there's people everywhere. I think that's been something that we've struggled with, and it's something where I think if you look at our scores are held down by the people that show up at early in the day.
That's so interesting. Now, I want to dive deep into how you all are using this data, but also sharing it with your team. So you all are at the ownership management level. So when you receive your monthly reports, what's that review process like? Who's initially going over the data, and then how do you relay that feedback to your team and your staff?
Sure. So our general manager and myself are the ones who are copied on your initial email. And we'll review it, and then we kind of splinter it out into multiple areas. We always review it at our manager meeting. If there's an area that needs improvement, we'll bring that into the floor supervisor meeting for like discussion. We can come up with some action items or coaching steps to fix whatever the challenge might be. Or even just like have a little bit of healthy debate about why the scores are what they are, right? Because they're not always so black and white. And then also, if there is a positive score, especially if somebody gets a direct shout out, we bring that into shift meetings. And sometimes we'll even announce it on our schedule messaging board. So-and-so had a positive experience here. Andrew, the quote, right? Like, Andrew made my experience of a lifetime. And we'll put it out there for everybody to see.
Nathan, how about an Angry Horse?
Yeah, so it goes to me and our taproom manager. We review it, and then we usually connect and kind of talk about it. I print it out and read it. I'm very tactile, so I like to have paper and write notes on it. But after we've kind of gone through it and digested it a bit, we will post it to a Slack channel for all of our staff to see, and we try to point out the things that were either really interesting to us, the staff shout outs, or if we can identify a staff person that maybe wasn't shouted out, but we've identified like, oh, it's the person with the X, Y, and Z tattoo on their forearm. We try to shout out like, oh, so and so had you were on highlighted in this secret hopper as a great experience. So we give the shout outs of both the wows and the yikes. So every once in a while there's one that comes back that isn't great, and then we ask the team for feedback of like, how could we make this better? It was a crazy day where we were slightly understaffed, got a huge rush. What could we have done differently? And it's led to some really interesting staff engagement of back and forth on Slack with different suggestions, ideas, and even just feedback in general about the reports, about how the text of the report looks great, but the score was a 50. But all of the comments are, this individual was wowed and this could be their new brewery, but we just don't understand why it's a 50.
Yeah, Nathan, you and I have had some conversations about that. It kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. Some things don't really matter to the guest per se, like introducing yourself, offering beer to go, but they can positively impact you, your staff, and your brewery.
Yeah, exactly. But it's led to some really great conversations with the staff team about exactly that. Like, this one individual might not see that as a good data point, but we as a brand do. Which I think has also helped to make positive changes within the staff team about like actually doing things like that, even though they don't see the value in it, or didn't see the value in it prior to.
Yeah, and we don't share our reports out with staff broadly. We just share it with the managers in the tap room, and we haven't really talked about it. I don't even think we disclose it. I mean, it's not hidden, but we don't tell people about this. We really just use it as a way of gathering data and then asking questions. But we do follow up with things like, if there's a bad review from Secret Hopper, we'll go to the cameras and go and watch that person come through the experience. Be like, well, how did they come in? Like, did they come in and look confused and walk around, or were they in a larger group? And it's funny, but you can see just from body language how people's experiences are. or if you have cameras. I think another thing on kind of the data sharing that we see is that we have their phone numbers if they ordered on QR codes. So when we see bad reviews coming in through our kind of self-reported reviews, we will just send them a text message from our main line, and we'll ask them, say, hey, you mentioned that you Mark, that you didn't have a good service experience. Like, what could we have done to make it better? Or, was there anything specifically that we could help you with? And they'll respond in text message very quickly with it. And that kind of being able to go and connect with people has also really helped us just get to the bottom of it.
No, good insight there. And for the three of you, I mean, these reports cover a lot of data, and you can't tell someone on your team to work on 10 things each month. It's just going to be overload. What's the process for you all to figure out what metric or what action, like Nathan, for you, for example, you want staff to get a little bit better at introducing themselves. So let's say in November, you say, this month, I really want you to focus on that. What does that training look like? Are you having a meeting where you really focus on strategies to better, perform? Or like, how is that happening when you're passing down the habit, but actually getting them to do it in an authentic way?
Yeah, and this is something we're still trying to figure out what works best. We've done different things where we've rolled things out in staff meetings. We've tried to roll things out over Slack and then face-to-face conversations. We're now actually looking at doing some LMS trainings where we actually record what the experience should look like, so that people go through like a course essentially where they get to answer questions afterwards. Just trying to find different ways to make, instead of incremental change, exponential changes, to really have an SOP of the guest experience. And that's the other thing we created, is an SOP for guest experience. Like, this is the expectation, but make it your own with these are the landmarks, and then make it your own to get to these landmarks.
So I want to dive a little bit more into motivation. I love talking about how we're getting our team to actually want to do something. So let's pretend your goal is to sell more to-go beer. What strategies are the three of you using to, motivate your team or reward them or recognize them to achieve certain goals? Is there anything that you're seeing working at your businesses?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I'd say finding people that at their core want to help other people have a good day and get what they need. And I think that that's something that's a soft skill. It's very difficult to train. And we've had better luck finding people that just have that on the inside, that's either the way they were born or the way that they were raised or how they've come through this world, but they just want to help people and they want to help them have a good time.
And at Prize, are you offering any sort of rewards or recognition or future No, you just get people who, let's say, get it, for lack of a better way.
Yeah, it's you get them in the right spot in the organization, because if there's somebody who's really beer knowledgeable but they're not a people person, then they shouldn't be behind the bar.
No, that's fascinating.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, because I agree, it is really hard to teach that soft skill if you don't have the driver of genuinely wanting it. You can't really manifest that in somebody. We do constantly talk about things like talking more about our food menu, even though they're not directly selling it, or suggesting that people visit the general store. I don't know that I'd say it worked in spades to just suggest that, but I do think it's really important to remind our team of the tools that are available to them. And sometimes it's just effective to also let them know, hey, if you sell a crowler to go, here's what the average tip out on that looks like, and here's how it's going to affect your wallet. And sometimes that motivates people in a different way.
And you also mentioned you give shout outs too. How does it make your team feel when they're recognized in that manner?
Generally good. I mean, for the front of house, like, they're pretty extroverted for the most part. They're already talking to people, so they don't mind that public, semi-public call out. And they do have a lot of great friendships with one another. So, we'll constantly see, like, will we say shout out to somebody in shift meeting, and then the whole, room erupts in applause. And that's kind of just fun. It's a good, if nothing else, it raises the energy going into the shift for the whole team and not just the person being called out. So that's a good positive thing.
Thanks, Jensine. Nathan, how about you? I know you like selling more to-go beer, so how are you getting your team to like selling it too?
Yeah, so we definitely have pointed out the tip thing, but what had the biggest impact is a reward system where we offered, this month the person that sells the most based on the hours that they worked, and we offered a gift card. It wasn't much, but it was something that people got excited about and created friendly competition where they were actually calling each other out on Slack, and kind of rousing each other as they were passing each other in the shifts of like, oh, I got 12 now. Well, I got 16 as of yesterday. I just haven't marked them down yet, which was really fun for a short period of time. It's not something we'd be able to do consistently, but to create that momentum of getting people to make the ask, it was a great way to instill that.
Yeah. One other thing I want to add, Andrew, that we've found that works really well is we're heavy in Slack, right? Like everybody loves Slack, but what we've moved to is a pre-shift every day for every single staff member, and having messages that are pre-written in a spreadsheet week at a time, so we know exactly what key messages for each area of the business. That has really allowed us to deliver on whatever those actions are, so that we know that for the next 3 days of this weekend, there's some event going on in the city. We can have a pre-shift message that ladders up to that, and then we can also put in retraining points, focus points for service. And that has really helped us have a vehicle for making change when there could be a staff of 35 working that are all different because people are part-time and working at different times in different seasons. So the pre-shift ritual has been it's the lever that we use to move service.
So Mike, you set yourself up for this one. Can you give an example of what one of those messages might look like?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it would be something as simple as it could be operational, like last week we had 15 open tabs over the weekend that didn't have payment attached. Please be very careful that you're closing the tabs and that you actually have payment that it went through before you let them walk away. Or it could be something like, we have a new beer coming, and this is something we're really proud of, and it's a partnership beer, and we want you to make sure that people know about that. It could also be a service touch thing, like keep your cell phones away from your hands when you're working. No guest should be able to see your cell phone and you on your cell phone when you're working, or keep your water bottles out of the sight lines of guests. It's like those types of messages. So it really can be anything, but the key is that we have an entire week planned out where we put those messages into a grid so that everybody's getting the same message, and we can rotate and vary and decide what we're going to message each day, through over time. Which ones do we reinforce regularly, and which ones do we just do as a one-time thing because it's more newsworthy?
Is that in writing, or are you verbalizing that?
It's in writing, but we verbalize it to them. So the managers have the grid, and they just go through the 7 key messages on the grid, and it takes less than 5 minutes. It's really fast.
I love that. We have a similar, we call it a hot sheet, but it's pretty long. And so we're kind of leaving it up to our floor managers to decipher, like, well, what's really important today versus like what's more important on Friday and what's more important on Tuesday. So I like the grid idea, and I'm an Excel dork, so I also like
send a screenshot, and then we save each tab each week so that we can go back and look at what our messages are going back, and we can look at what our messages, we can set messages in the future.
Love it.
Oh, I like that so much too. So, as we can wind down this conversation, it's really about getting your staff excited, but also finding ways to turn every guest into a regular, because they may be your next best customer. So let's talk big picture for a sec. How do you train your staff when someone walks through the door? Any tips or strategies for making sure they treat that first time guest the same as they do as a regular who comes every Thursday night? It could be Friday night, Saturday night, whatever day you want to pretend it really is.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it kind of goes back to the open-ended questions, because I would argue that we don't want them to treat them the same. We want them to feel equally welcome. But obviously, how we arrive at that conclusion is going to be a different path. And so figuring out what's bringing them in the door. Our first question is, have you been here before? And that is a question that we ask as soon as you come in. And if they say no, you go into a little bit more detail on the logistics of navigating the experience than we would if they've been here before. But, once they're in the service, just figuring out what brought them in that day is key. It also shows curiosity. and finding out about them. And I think people like to share that stuff, but they're not going to just like blurt it out unprompted. So I think that's also really important to just give them that runway, and it helps us do our job better.
Definitely. Nathan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you kind of make sure you're giving each guest that walks in an equally valuable experience.
Yeah, and by all means, I don't know if we've got this down 100% yet, but we're really working on it right now. We created kind of a whole new training plan as we're onboarding staff, and we're in the process of implementing it with our current staff, of which I kind of mentioned earlier, like the SOP for customer engagement. And it has a couple different decision trees in it. So if they're a new customer, you go down this decision path and welcome them, tell them a little bit more about the brand. If they're a returning customer, they go down this path. But really trying to create a consistent experience. And granted, this will be slightly different with our regulars. Like, when Bobby comes in and sits at the bar, we're going to welcome him a little bit differently, obviously, than that decision tree, because he's there, 5 days a week. But we're trying to create an environment where staff feel comfortable and well supported to know and naturally be able to go through that engagement path.
No, thanks, Nathan. And Mike?
I think we do a good job of asking the questions early on for people that are new and have you been here before. I think where we've struggled is definitely on the regulars. Having a larger space is where people come when it's very busy. It's hard to really track down who those regulars are, and we have the technology to do it. We just haven't really acted on it. But I think that if that is a focus of ours going forward, is how do we find the people that do come back month after month, and make sure that we can go out and seek them out and connect with them, because having it be self-service is a challenge, because maybe they don't see the same person working every single time that they're there.
Good insight there. Yeah, I mean, data can help us maximize these experiences so much. We've talked about so many unique aspects of the taproom experience today, and I appreciate your time. I want to end with one final question, and I want to put a disclaimer out there. You all can't say the same answer. So 3 unique answers. For everyone listening right now and tuning in after the fact, what's something you recommend they do as soon as they finish watching? And Jensine, because you went first, you get to go last. Mike, you get to go first.
All right, perfect. I'd say the number one thing is I'm going to do 2. One is do a pre-shift with staff, and 2, do a daily walkthrough, and make those 2 rituals be part of your day, either how it's set up in the morning or how it gets closed. But make sure that you have a manager walking through every day and being very particular about the space, and talking with everybody on staff who's working, and give them the same exact messages that day that they're going to work.
2 good ones. Thank you. Nathan?
Oh, man. I guess for me, it would be to systematize your experience. Document what you expect, and hold people, train people on it, and then hold them accountable to it. So I'm a big fan of SOPs, as you probably have heard. So creating that experience, documenting the experience, making sure people are really trained on how to implement it. But the most important thing is just making sure it's actually being implemented once you've done all that work.
And I also want to see the updated version of your customer experience document.
I actually have like 4 updates I'm going to do to it right after this call.
Love that so much. Jensine, take us home.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with everything that was said already. Baseline foundation, super critical. Once that's established, though, I think engaging with your staff is a really great thing. The other 2 people on the call mentioned Slack. We have a scheduling program that allows us to also use like a message board chat function. And we use it constantly to keep conversation going about how we can improve, or give shout outs, recognitions, ask for input. The staff wants to be engaged and they want to be heard. And so tapping into that resource is really invaluable, because they are the ones who are interacting with the guests every single day. And they have a lot of value to teach you on what you don't know, what you can't see from your vantage point. And I would encourage everybody to use that. It also helps to, again, like make them feel heard. And I think a happy team is so critical to a happy guest experience.
No, good insight there. So for anyone interested in following Tröegs and seeing all the cool things you're doing, where do you recommend they tune into?
Yeah, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We do at Tröegs Beer is our main channel. What's happening specifically at the brewery is at Tröegs_Hershey. So we have 2 channels.
Got it. Nathan, how about at Angry Risk? How can we see what you're doing cool?
Either online at angryhorsebrewing.com or on social, we're at Angry Horse Brewing.
Thank you so much. And Mike?
Same thing, Prize Brewing on Instagram and Facebook, and we also have a newsletter that you can sign up for on our website.
Well, Mike, Nathan, and Jensine, thank you so much for being here today, sharing all your wisdom and insight and strategies. And thanks everybody else for being here, your time, because you're dedicated to creating world-class taproom experiences. Everybody, we'll see you soon. Cheers.